We'll get to all that coming up, but let's kick things off here with Senator Rand Paul, who joins us now. Senator Paul, great to have you this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. A lot to cover with you. But first to the vaccine rollout. As a doctor, you have weighed in on this extensively throughout the pandemic. There are so many people across the country right now, elderly, vulnerable, who still cannot get their first shot. So what's happening here?
You know, I think the news is overwhelmingly good. If you look at the daily incidence of numbers, I think naturally we're achieving a lot of immunity, plus the vaccine, the combination. There was a doctor 2 days ago in the Wall Street Journal, McCary, saying this could be gone by April. And I know that sounds optimistic, but count me in the optimistic club that I think we're really moving fast. I think we're moving so rapidly towards an end of this that we really ought to delay this whole COVID bailout thing, because it's just $2 trillion more of borrowing. I'd start opening the economy and letting people live again. I mean, we are really doing well with the vaccine. 50 million, that's a lot. 28 million people have gotten it, but there could easily be another 20 million people who don't know they have it. So really, we may be about 100 million or so with immunity now. And I don't know, the numbers are coming down dramatically. So I think a lot of good news.
Yeah, when you look at that curve coming down so steeply in the way that it is, you do think that maybe we're finally seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. Another big topic in Washington, the Biden administration and the White House defending its reopening of that migrant minor facility down there in Texas, the same one that was so robustly criticized when it was opened during the Trump administration. Is this really, Senator, any different than we saw during the Trump administration? It's just a different political party that's doing it?
Do you think that the Democrats who were crying those tears over the poor people they said Trump put in cages, do you think those might be tears of hypocrisy? The cages, the detainment facilities were built under Obama administration. They were used under the Trump administration. Now they're being reopened under the Biden administration. Count me one who thinks that there's a load of hypocrisy going on here. And I think we should always be humane to people, even coming to our country illegally. But I think we should have a strict policy of sending people back who come here. I'm for the Remain in Mexico policy, that if you're trying to break into the country, you stay in a camp on the other side of the border, that you never set a foot in here. And if you do, you're sent back. But I'm also for more legal and lawful immigration. I want more people to come to our country, and I think immigrants are a great asset to our country. But I don't want illegal and unlawful immigration. So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy going around.
Jen Psaki was pressed about just this in the briefing room today on migrant kids at the border. Here's what she said. Listen. Okay, she said our focus is approaching this with humanity and safety. She's talking about the protocols that are needed, that they needed to be revamped, that there's teachers there, there's education services there. Is it any of this, Senator? And by the way, here's her in her own words first. Listen.
Our focus is on approaching this from the view of humanity and with safety. We had to reopen a new facility that had previously been closed because of COVID protocols. Because we can't have kids in beds next to each other, we need space appropriate. It's been revamped. There's educational services there. There are health services and medical services. But our objective is to move them as quickly as we can to families that have been vetted.
To be clear what she's talking about, and we can put it up on the screen, those containers that these kids are in right now, where they're supposedly getting, we hope, the best medical care, food that needs to be provided to them, education, whatever it is. I don't know, is anything about this different than what the Trump administration was doing with these kids at the border?
No, and I think it's important that you listen to what she says, how she appears to show compassion, but also how when you tell people that it's a great place to come to, more people will come. And it's very dangerous to come across the border. They come across the desert with these coyotes. Many of them are drug dealers. Some of them are sex traffickers. Some of them get tricked into coming and are kidnapped and made into go into the sex trade. So it shouldn't be an encouragement to come illegally. So by telling them, oh, we're going to have schools for you and, it'll be like summer vacation is a bad idea. The message should be, we want you, if you come here legally and lawfully, go to an embassy, apply to come to our country legally and lawfully, say you're a hard worker. I'm all for that. But telling people to come in caravans of 25,000 people, it brings a COVID risk to us, but it also endangers those people. Every year, every day, people are dying crossing the desert or being tricked into, being part of a drug cartel caravan. And so, no, I think what she does on the on the surface appears compassionate, but it's actually something that is very inhumanitarian that she's offering.
Senator Paul, yesterday you and Congressman Joe Wilson introduced the National Right to Work Act. This would elevate the situation in 28 individual states and make it national. Those 28 states like to be right to work states because it makes them competitive. They can try to attract businesses from states that aren't right to work. But if you make it national, does that not kill the uniqueness of these 28 states?
Well, there is that argument. Kentucky became a right-to-work state a few years ago because you're right. We want to compete with neighboring states that are right-to-work or other states that aren't. But I guess the way I look at it is if the whole United States became right-to-work, it gives us a competitive advantage over other places in the world, and it makes us all competitive. And people would still be able to organize. I'm not against collective bargaining. There is a value in using your leverage to get a better wage or a better price as a consumer, but it just doesn't force it. All we do is we take away the force from the law, so you can't be fired if you choose not to join the union. I think it's a good piece of legislation. It's as much about freedom for the worker as it is anything, that a worker gets to decide, do you want your wages? And that way the unions will have an incentive to work harder to please the workers, because they would have to get the workers' vote to be in the union instead of them all being forced to give dues.
Senator, finally, I want to ask you about the China threat and House Republicans requesting that the FBI brief them on the Eric Swalwell Chinese spy scandal and the full extent of this when it comes to lawmakers. Here is Congressman Comer on Swalwell. Listen.
This is the biggest scandal in Congress right now from a member of Congress. Eric Swalwell is proven that he had a close relationship with a Chinese spy. It's proven that he was investigated by it, and yet Nancy Pelosi's done nothing about it.
That was your Republican colleague James Comer from Kentucky. Where do you stand on this? What do you want to see happen?
Well, not only are they not punishing him or investigating it, they had the audacity to send him over as a House impeachment manager to lecture us on how bad Donald Trump was. Meanwhile, he's a guy consorting with a Chinese spy. So no, absolutely ought to be investigated. People have to realize he's on the Intelligence Committee. They get all kinds of specialized information that I'm not allowed access to. I can't go to their meetings. And so I get to vote on these things sort of indirectly, but I don't get the same knowledge he gets, and he's been compromised. So without question, he ought to be suspended, till there's a completion of an investigation. But Nancy Pelosi just sweeping this one under the rug.
All right, Senator, appreciate you coming on this afternoon. Thank you.